Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Zone Defense Podcast. And be sure to ring that bell to get post notifications. Also, hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. Today, Chris and I will be doing our first edition of the Zone Defense Basketball Hour. How's it going, Chris?
It's going well, Drew. I'm excited to talk about the NBA here. It was really fun doing our breakdowns. Since then, we haven't really talked about the NBA a whole lot on that channel. But, today we're going to get into three things each, three things from the season so far, just that we found interesting, as well as breaking down the blockbuster trade and the news going on with Kyrie. So I'll kind of start it off here with the big trade. Obviously the elephant in the room on this entire season. Maybe you can consider it the biggest trade in NBA history, which I actually do think it is because it was absolutely insane. But the James Harden trade, clearly the big piece in the trade. The Brooklyn Nets traded for, disgruntled superstar James Harden to pair him with Kyrie Irving's ghost, and then Kevin Durant. So in that trade, the Rockets were able. Well, I'll kind of break it down at first. The Rockets initially got Karis LeVert, Kurocs, Exum, 4 unprotected first-round picks from Brooklyn, 3 from Brooklyn, 1 from Milwaukee, it looks like, and then 4 unprotected first-round pick swaps as well. So, a total of, 4 first-round picks and then 4 pick swaps, where they can swap with the Nets anytime they want, no questions asked. They just get basically the better pick of the two. So, a lot of draft capital for them, a lot of important resources for them to, really get into a rebuild here. But also, the Pacers managed to trade for Karis LeVert and give up Victor Oladipo to the Rockets, kind of in the same trade. And then in this trade, also the Cavaliers got Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. They threw in some draft capital as well. So just a total, just absolute mess. I'll kind of break it down. I'll give you my initial thoughts, and I'll let you go. I really think all 4 teams won this trade personally. It's crazy to say all 4 teams got something of value. Obviously, the Nets, James Harden, they're basically just ring or bust this year at this point. I think they have to win. They have to win the NBA Finals for this to be a good trade. But I think they're going to win the NBA Finals. So, I think it is going to be a good trade. The Rockets clearly have some issues. But, getting Oladipo and getting all that draft capital for Harden, I mean, maybe you can make the argument that going after Ben Simmons would be the better way to go in this, getting the best player. I think the Sixers were willing to give up Simmons. They just didn't want to give up a bunch of other pieces as well because Simmons is so good and so valuable. So I would say that would have been the better way to go. But, I mean, they got Oladipo, who's still a really good player. I mean, he's coming off the injury. I think he's only going to get better, and now he's got a kind of a more of a he was getting kind of outshined by both Brogdon and Sabonis. Here, I think he could end up being the best player. I know Christian Wood's a good player. John Wall. It's going to make a pretty good. I mean, you can call it a big 3, but just 3 solid players and guys that could all average around 20 a game. I mean, Wood and Wall are both right around 20 right now. You kind of throw him into that. I think they fit really well. It's going to be a good defensive backcourt with Wall and Oladipo, and then if he's got anything left, this team could still make the playoffs, in my opinion. So I actually think even by massively downgrading players, I feel a little bit better about the Rockets' chances to make the playoffs without that big locker room cancer going on there. And then obviously the Pacers, Karis LeVert, a great player. Yeah, he's fantastic. I love Karis LeVert. I think he was he's the third best player. He was the third best player on the Nets, but I would say a borderline star in my opinion. I think he's that good. I think I think this is going to be a good move for him. He's going to get. I know Brogdon's their point guard, but he's not he can play off ball and stuff. So I think LeVert's going to have the ball in his hands. I think it's going to be really fun to watch to see how he fits in there. I think he fits a lot better than Oladipo did. But and then Cavs got Jared Allen. I mean, whatever they do with Drummond, I don't think he's the long-term answer, despite absolutely going off yesterday with a 30-20 game and kind of carrying them to a win. I think Allen is more of a future role for this team. I think he's a good fit for them. He's a really talented big guy, both offensively and defensively in the low block. Drew, I'll give you the floor, man. Go ahead.
Honestly, yeah, I agree with you. I think everybody won the trade. I think you touched on it there, though. I think the one team that might be a little bit worrisome is just the Rockets. I mean, it sounds like they either could have had, I think it was Matisse Thybulle and Ben Simmons for James Harden from the Sixers. The Rockets were like, "Hey, give us Maxey and a couple first-round picks," and the Sixers were like, "No, thanks." And then that's when they accepted this deal. So it seems like they could have either, if they wanted to win now, they could have got Ben Simmons. If they want to do more long-term, because let's not forget they lost basically all their first round picks in the Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook trades from a few summers ago. So um, they needed to restock their draft capital. They elected to go that route. So we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, I think it was. You could make arguments for both deals as them being really good. They just decided they wanted to do have a more long term approach, and I think that works out great. And let's also not forget the Paul Pierce Kevin Garnett deal from a few years ago. When the Nets traded their entire future for Garnett and Pierce. Of course, Garnett and Pierce were near the end of their prime. Harden is still firmly in the middle of his prime. He's got to get in a little better shape, though, but who knows? But yeah, with that obviously backfired tremendously in the Nets' face, and the Celtics were able to use all those picks they got on guys like Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. So that could also potentially work out for the Rockets if this Nets thing doesn't go well. So overall, I do like what the Rockets did. Getting a guy like Victor Oladipo, reportedly he is not happy to be in Houston. I saw that last night, and I guess he really wants to go to Miami. So he's on an expiring deal. So they could just kind of just let this play out, or they could try and trade him at the deadline, because I know they can't trade him like right now because they just acquired him. I think there's like a little bit of there's a couple months they have to wait, I think. But I'm pretty sure by the deadline they will be able to trade him again. So they could swap Oladipo for a few more picks as well. But even if Oladipo is like, hey, let's do this thing, I'll stay with the Rockets. I actually really like this team. I think they're going to be better than they were with James Harden in a very weird way, just because Harden wasn't playing well. I mean, I know he got up to a good start, but then when he realized I really don't want to be in Houston anymore, he was obviously out of shape. That's been well documented. He wasn't playing super well, so I think just having that distraction and just locker room presence that Harden brought day in and day out, all the drama, all the practice, is he practicing, is he not practicing, all the media questions, the fact that just whole thing is gone now, I think that'll really help this Rockets team. And I think they're definitely going to be in the play-in tournament, or at least be in competition for the play-in tournament when you got guys like John Wall, Boogie Cousins, assuming they can stay healthy, Christian Wood, Oladipo now. They had Jayshawn Tate's been kind of good recently. So they have a solid team. And overall, I think the Rockets did a good job. The Nets, there are some serious question marks there. I know we're talking about it a little bit later with Kyrie Irving. Is he playing? Is he not playing? That's a concern, because they did trade away a lot of their depth. Guys like Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, which you could argue were their third and fourth best players behind. Actually, I think there's really no argument. They were their third and fourth best players behind Kyrie and KD. So they're really going to hurt that. Obviously, Harden's an upgrade over LeVert, but at the same time, they're really going to miss Jared Allen's defensive presence, because he was really coming along strong there at the center spot, and now they're going to have to force DeAndre Jordan back into the starting lineup. So I'm a little worried on the Nets front there, as well as just the chemistry. It seems like everyone's just booking their ticket to the ring ceremony right now. But I think the Bucks are going to put up a huge fight against the Nets. I also look at both the LA teams out west that'll put up a huge fight against the Nets as well. Even Philadelphia, maybe. Ben Simmons motivated because he almost got traded. Who knows? So I am a little worried about the Nets, because they're going to score a ton of points, but also you got to play defense, and I don't know how much defense they're actually going to play. But I'll quickly jump into the last two. Pacers, Karis LeVert. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a Michigan basketball fan. I've loved Karis since he was at Michigan. I think it was 6-7 years ago now. The big thing with him is can he stay healthy? It was the same concern when he was at Michigan with his foot problems. Those have unfortunately carried over into the NBA. But when healthy, I mean, I think he is an upgrade over Oladipo, because he's younger, he's cheaper. He's not a locker room distraction like Oladipo was. And I think he's going to be a really good addition there to the Pacers team, who, not to spoil any of my three things, but I really love this Pacers team going forward. I think they could be a dark horse team in the Eastern Conference. And the Cavs, Jared Allen, I already kind of talked about him when I was talking with the Nets side of things. I think he's a really great young center, was really seeming to coming into his own with the Nets this year. And I think the Cavs, even though there's a logjam there at the moment with guys like Andre Drummond, Kevin Love, Larry Nance, Drummond's name is already popping up in trade rumors. His contract almost unmovable. As we saw even last deadline when the Pistons traded him for John Henson and a couple second rounders, I think and Brandon Knight too. That was it. So they could trade Drummond, but they're probably not going to get a ton back. Same thing with Kevin Love. Hopefully, if he gets healthy, they can trade him as well. Because they're obviously older, and Jared Allen's a young guy. Still, I think he's only like 23 or 24 years old. So this gives them a really solid, quote unquote, big three with the Sexland backcourt with Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, and then having Jared Allen as a nice presence in center, as well as Okoro too. So that's actually a solid big four, really. So this is a great move for the Cavs. I think all they gave up was a second round pick to get him, and Taurean Prince too. I mean, he's a solid bench guy. He's not a terrible player either. So I really, really like it for the Pacers, Cavs, and actually even the Rockets for the most part. The Nets, I am a little worried. I know a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, they're going to win the championship this year. I don't know. There's three other really good teams, I think, at least in the NBA that could interfere with that. But anything else you wanted to touch on with the trade?
No, I mean, I think like I said, I think it's a win-win-win-win trade for everybody. I mean, we'll see about the Harden side, see about the Rocket side. Personally, just first impression, I like the trade for everybody. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, though, for sure. But yeah, we can jump into the next thing right now if you'd like.
Yeah, so I think the next thing we want to talk about was just the Kyrie Irving situation, where he missed a few games due to personal reasons, and then a video appeared of him attending, I believe it was his younger sister's 30th birthday party without a mask on, and the Nets were not aware of this, so that caused him to miss a few extra games as well for COVID protocols reasons, and I think eventually he was fined I think $50,000, and he was also lost I think $800,000 in salary due to the fact that he missed games, as well as him not following the league's safety protocols. So lots going on here with Kyrie, obviously, really ever since he left, even with Cleveland. I don't know if you saw that story, Chris, but he when the Cavs were going to the finals, I think it was his last Cleveland, he was not talking to any teammates because he just was so upset with Cleveland, and they were going to the finals. So they were a really good team, but he just wasn't talking to anybody.
Weird.
So there was that. Obviously, the situation with Boston, where he was mad at the younger guys and then got traded out or left there for Brooklyn last year. Very similar. He had some injuries where it was like, this really as serious as it sounds, and he was calling out the younger guys in the media. And now this year, he's doing all this stuff again. So I guess I'll open it up to you, Chris. Like, what are your thoughts on this situation? Because it seems like there's a lot of different perspectives that people are taking when it comes to Kyrie Irving.
I mean, for Kyrie Irving, obviously, I mean, when he's on the court, when he's motivated, he's one of the best point guards in the league. There's no question about it. Best ball handler in the league, and like he can pretty much do everything on the offensive end. I mean, this is, I would say, a borderline generational talent at the point guard position. This guy is a stud when he's on the court. The problem is just I don't know if he's worth all this off the court drama stuff. I think maybe they would have been better off trading him away in this deal possibly than and keeping LeVert around than having this big three that may potentially be a big one if Harden isn't in shape. Well, there is a big one, but Harden, he has to get back in shape. I think he will. I think he's actually going to do well in Brooklyn personally. So I think it's more of a him and KD are going to be fine. It's just going to be, is Kyrie even there, man? I just don't really know. Is he both there physically and just mentally? Is he in it with this team? I don't really know what other destination, what other team is going to make him happy. I just don't. I don't even think it's worth it to make him happy anymore. Personally, I mean, he's a really good player, but he's not LeBron James. He's not some guy that should have all this power over the organization. I mean, and he pretty much has it over the Nets now. They don't have LeVert, so he's pretty much the only show in town at the point guard position. I mean, I know they got Harden. Obviously, he can run point as well, but Kyrie is really their only true point guard, and it really is kind of just sad. I would love to see a motivated and just drama-free Kyrie for a full season because he's so good, but it'll never happen. So, I mean, at what point do you say just hang him up, man? Like, you can't handle. Clearly, the NBA isn't for you. Hopefully, the rest of your life you can get something done. But it's just, I mean, there comes to a point where it just is it really worth it, I guess, if he's not producing at an elite level, which he has been. To give him credit, he pretty much always has been, despite even the distractions around the team or whatever. He's still been a high level player his entire career. It just, I mean, he's had the injuries. He's had this drama so far this season when it's already a season filled with a lot of hardships and players being out for legitimate reasons. And you just compare him to a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, who's out there, who's had 7 family members die. He has COVID now, even, which just thoughts and prayers for him. Obviously, he's one of my favorite players, man. I love him. But you compare a player like that to a player like Kyrie, who's just taking these like breaks and stuff and whatever. I don't really know what's going on with him personally, but you just look at that and it's just 2 totally different things. I mean, it just really pains me to see it where it's a guy that I really like to watch play, but I just can't respect him because of the off the court issues and issues he's had with teammates and stuff. But what are your thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly agree with you, and I know I think Stephen A. Smith said how he should retire. I honestly I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. I kind of agree with them. I mean, it just no. I do have some issues with the way Kyrie has handled the situation. Obviously, it's been a tough year well, I know it's 2021 now, but it's been a tough year counting this whole pandemic and everything. It's been a tough year for everybody, and it seems like maybe he's just handling it tougher than other people, which is obviously a completely an understandable excuse. Well, not really an excuse, understandable reason. But at the same time, I feel like you owe it to your teammates, to everybody, to talk to them and to tell them, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. I just need to take a break. And at least based on what Brooklyn said, it sounds like that they really haven't gotten that from Kyrie. And when they're paying you $30 million a year, I think that you owe it to them to give them some sort of explanation as to why. Because obviously it's a tough circumstances everyone's going through, and it's completely understandable if he just needs a break. But you have to talk to them, and when he was missing games for personal reasons, I kind of understood it. But then when the video comes out of him at his sister's birthday party without a mask on, I mean, that's just breaching the trust of all the guys in the locker room. A lot of guys, you mentioned it there, Karl Anthony Towns has lost family members. Now he has COVID. Several guys, you can't see your family. You can't go out as much. You can't do anything because of the league safety protocols. And for Kyrie to miss a ton of games because of personal reasons and then be caught at a party without a mask on, it's sad. And he's supposed to be a leader of the team. And when you see if you're a younger guy on that team, I know there are a lot of veterans on that team. If you're a younger guy on that team, you see one of your leaders out there partying. What message does that send to the rest of the guys, right? And I mean, I know if I was a teammate of Kyrie's and he just was doing that stuff without giving any reason to why, and really breaking that trust, I'd have a really serious problem with it. With that being said, though, even though I disagree with all that he did, I can't understand if Kyrie just is like, hey, I just don't want to play basketball anymore. I mean, I think this is a couple of years ago now, but I believe he said in an interview how he wanted to retire early. Like he wanted to retire young. So obviously a lot of guys go into their mid to late 30s. He said he maybe wanted to retire in his early 30s or maybe even before that. So I understand that. It just seems like he's much more into, and props to him, kudos to him. He's much more into the social justice and advocacy and I think he's very religious, maybe going to some sort of ministry. It seems like that's just more where his mind's at. And I think maybe he just needs to realize that and follow that passion, because it seems like at least the last few years, it just seems like basketball just isn't his passion anymore. And you see guys like his teammate Kevin Durant, James Harden, who go out there every single day. You can tell they really love the game of basketball. And Kyrie, it's fine. It just doesn't seem like he loves the game anymore. So
Right.
I think that's basically what Stephen A. Smith said too the other day on ESPN, and I 100% agree with that, because I was kind of thinking that last season too. It just seems like he's just not into basketball anymore, which is obviously fine. Everybody switches careers all the time. So that's at least my thoughts on it. Because it's hard for us to tell, because I don't know what his personal reasons are, and there's a good chance we're never going to know what his personal reasons are, whether they're a big something or whether it's really nothing. But I did not like the video. I did not like how Kyrie handled that. But I guess I can kind of understand the reasoning behind him maybe just not wanting to play basketball anymore. But at the same time, though, you did sign a contract. They're paying you like $30-some million a year. Maybe you can find it to play basketball because they are paying you that much money, or at least maybe take a contract kind of or pay cut. I guess that's what I was trying to say, something like that. But
Yeah.
that's at least what I think about it.
I mean, yeah, and just kind of to recap, or not recap, just kind of add to your point. Obviously, I mean, people don't talk about the good things Kyrie does enough. Which I mean, this last year, I mean, he donated over $2 million to the WNBA players for like salary
Yeah.
loss. Whatever. He's donated to multiple different of these things he believes in or whatever. He's donated a ton of money to a bunch of different organizations, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or just otherwise, charities and stuff. He donates a lot of money and a lot of time. I don't think he's a bad guy at all, but like you said, I'm not sure he's in it. I mean, we're talking about this is an NBA podcast. We have to get into what like. I mean, he's here to play basketball. I mean, like you said, he signed a contract. I kind of agree with you where it's like, it's fine if you don't want to play, but just don't play. Like it's kind of rather than be kind of leave the Nets out to dry.
Exactly.
With KD and Harden and all the teammates and everyone else on the team, just leaving everybody else out to dry and thinking they have you, but they really don't. I guess is what it is. It's kind of where I have a problem with it. It's annoying a little bit. It would be annoying at least as a teammate or whatever. But like I said, I mean I think he's a good dude. I just don't know if basketball is his thing anymore. I think he's got a lot of other things on his mind, and like you said, we may never find out, but. It's going to be interesting to see if he can come back, get focused again. Maybe the Harden trade rejuvenates him a little bit. This team can win the finals or whatever at least one time, and then he can move on if he needs to after that. That would be probably what's best for everybody. But we'll see. Maybe he can turn his career around a little bit in terms of the off the field stuff for the next couple of years. Because I'm sure he's going to retire within the next 2-3 years. Is what my kind of thoughts are. So, but we'll see, I guess.
And I'm glad you mentioned too all the good stuff he does too, because I feel like because of how he handles himself on and off the basketball court in terms of like a basketball sense, like you said, he gets a bad rap for being a bad guy. But you mentioned it there; he's donated millions of dollars to all sorts of different social justice causes and everything like that, which is great. And he also does a bunch of videos of him, giving his shoes to kids, talking to veterans, talking to soldiers. He's a good dude. I just don't know if I just don't think he knows how to handle the situation. And obviously, as you said, I agree, he's handled it pretty poorly so far. But it sounds like, I think he said something in the media that he was like ready to go. He was like, hey, let's do this with Harden and KD. So maybe he's motivated, but as we've seen in the years past with Kyrie, it seems like he's motivated. He's good to go one day, and then the next day, because even not even a month ago, when around Christmas Day, when they played really well against, I think it was Golden State. I think no, not Golden State. I forgot who they played on Christmas Day, but the Celtics. They played the Celtics, and Kyrie was really good, and everybody was like, "Oh man, the Nets are just going to roll to the championship." And now, not even a month later, we're dealing with this. So. I think I will say final point here. It is telling though that the Nets traded for James Harden, because a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, they're making a big three." I think James Harden might be. I mean, that's heck of an insurance plan right there. But I think James Harden is some Kyrie insurance here. If maybe the Nets know something that we don't, where Kyrie might be retiring pretty soon. So now, even if Kyrie retires, the Nets next year will be in a very similar spot as how they were the start of this year with two superstar guys. If anything, there might be in a better spot, because I think Harden is a better player than Kyrie. But
heck of an insurance plan to get a guy that has been totally calling out his teammates and stuff in Houston, and trading everything for him.
But he sent out a thing yesterday saying how he loved Houston, how he's indebted to them. So hey, he's a good guy. He didn't want to leave Houston according to that post. So I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But I mean, I don't know if the best business decision is to go after a guy that was just calling out teammates, coaches, organization, pretty much everybody, and trying to replace him with a dude that has been kind of in and out of the team. But we can get into our three things. I'll let you kind of lay it out first.
Yeah, real quick though, I just wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
I can understand like Kyrie stuff, and I can, like, as we said, we talked about, I can kind of understand the reasoning behind it a little bit. The James Harden thing, he's just a jerk, quite frankly. I mean, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're going out, you're calling everybody out, and then you come out and say, "Oh, I love Houston so much. It's so sad for me to leave." What? Anyway, so I had a problem with that, but and I don't really. I don't really like Harden anymore, but at Kyrie, I can at least see what's going on. But anyway, we'll jump into the three things. So it's pretty simple. Chris kind of outlined it at the very beginning, but we're each going to present three topics. We'll just go back and forth of big storylines, things we want to talk about that are going on right now in the NBA. So I guess I can start us off here real quick. So I'm a Pistons fan. The Pistons obviously suck, but no one wants to hear about the Pistons because it's obvious they suck. Jerami Grant, though, dark horse, most improved player candidate. He's been looking really good, but they're only at 2-9 right now, so they're not a great team. But some other teams that are also not doing super great. The Washington Wizards. Russell Westbrook's been gone for a very long time, obviously, as well as Bradley Beal keeps putting up 60 points, but yet they keep losing games. But I feel like some people were like, hey, the Wizards, they might be good, they might not be good. I don't know. There might be some serious rumors. There's not some rumors there yet, but I could see a world where Bradley Beal gets traded here very, very soon if he's just like, I'm tired of losing. But like I said, we kind of understood, hey, maybe the Wizards aren't going to be super good. We were both high on them, but it's not super surprising, especially without Westbrook, that they're not doing great, even though Westbrook hasn't had a great season in the few games he's played. But the team that's not doing well that I really want to focus on here is the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they won again last night, but they're currently 3-8. They are the third worst team in the Eastern Conference, and I believe the fourth worst team overall, because in the West, the only really bad team is the Timberwolves. But the Raptors are only 3-8, and I know that they're starting to play a little bit better here, as I said. But Kyle Lowry's looked good. Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, they've been pretty inconsistent. And other than that, Chris Boucher's also played really well. But other than that, I mean, OG, he has good game, has a bad game. Norman Powell hasn't looked great. They were running out Alex Len and Aaron Baines as their center duo. That hasn't worked, which is why Chris Boucher is starting to get more and more minutes. And this was a team that, we did our preview episodes, we both talked about how there were 6 legitimately really good teams in the East, and the Raptors were one of those teams. We were both a little bit lower on them. I think we had them more in the 4, 5, 6 range, but I saw a lot of previews that had them as a top 3 team in the East, no doubt about it. So the fact that they might be struggling just to make the play-in tournament here, obviously it's still early, but it's got to be a really, really big shock here. And I have a few kind of thoughts about how they can possibly move forward, but I wanted to hear what have you thought about the Raptors here so far?
Yeah, this was also, so we only have 5 points because this was also my favorite. The Toronto Raptors mostly focused on, that was my first point as well that I wanted to bring up. So, I mean, with the Raptors, I have League Pass this year, so I've been watching a lot more. I normally don't get to watch a lot of Raptors basketball, but this year I've watched a ton. I feel like, they've been on the West Coast a little bit here recently, but it's really been a struggle down the stretch for them. These games, they're getting these leads, they're getting off to these good starts, and then they just don't seem like they have a guy right now, which is crazy to me because I think Kyle Lowry is, well, maybe not a superstar. He's a guy that you can rely on down the stretch of games, and it just doesn't seem like it seems like he's almost deferring to his teammates when it comes down to rather than take over, which is what he should be doing because he's more of like that leader, that guy that you want with the ball in your hands as much as possible down the stretch. It seems like he's kind of deferring to guys like Pascal Siakam, which he's missed 2 game winners now. So obviously probably not the guy you want taking the final shot. Fred VanVleet, like you said, has been insanely streaky where he'll go entire quarters where he can't put any. He'll 0 for 8, 0 for 9 from the floor, maybe even whole halves, and then he'll just go 5 for 5 from 3 in the following quarter or whatever. And I mean, that's just who he is. I mean, that's the guy they re-signed. It's not really different than anything he's been in his career. He's not a super efficient scorer, but he's a guy that can really fill it up. He's a high volume scorer. So not really anything. I don't really think he's been anything out of the ordinary personally. But you look at, I really think they're really. I think I made a pretty big deal about the Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, them leaving. I think I made a pretty big deal, but not enough clearly because it just seems like losses that maybe they can't overcome or can't be like as good as they were. It really just seems like a team that's really struggling to have an identity, I guess, in my opinion. So, and obviously they're forcing guys like Norm Powell into the rotation a little bit more. I mean, he was getting big minutes, but he's got to be relied on as one of their best, maybe almost their leader in their second unit. And it doesn't seem like it's working out right now because he's not playing very well. But Boucher, which I'm going to bring him up later as well. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert tease to my next point, but I think he's been their best player. I mean, he struggled to stay out of foul trouble a lot. It's why he
Yeah.
wasn't starting rotation, but he probably should have been regardless because he's been so dominant getting blocks. He can shoot the ball as well. He's averaging over 15 a game. It's extremely interesting to see his development. Getting forced in this bigger role. He's definitely the one thriving in it, but everybody else, I mean, Siakam started off rough. He's kind of picked it up. Lowry, like I said, deferring. FEV, which is he's been whatever, and then OG, which like you said, one night is sweet splashing threes, the next night he puts up like 3 rebounds and no other stats. It just doesn't really make any sense to me. But I think this team, I think they can turn it around still. Maybe not to the level that we thought initially, but I don't know. I mean, it's a rough start. They just seem like they're struggling to find their identity. But what do you think about these guys so far? I know you kind of brought it up a little bit since you brought up the point. Do you have any? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think Siakam, I mean, he's been better, but he's got to find another move besides the spin move. I mean, it's just nonstop spin city. It's like you're at like the laundromat and you're just looking at the spin cycle. I mean, that's just all he does is the spin move. And it's like, dude, get another move. It's like, doesn't matter where he's out on the court, just a spin move. Okay. Like, let's work on something else. And I honestly think, I know I was pretty hard on him in our preview episode, but I think if he does develop another move or two, I mean, I think he could be the guy that everybody expected him to be at the first half of last season when he was an all-star where he got paid. But right now, if he just keeps going to that spin move and is just not, he's also pretty streaky, even though he's been pretty consistent here as of late after getting out to a tough start. I think he could be a top guy, but if not, I think he's just going to be a number 2, number 3 guy. And I think he could even be a number 2 or number 3 guy regardless. And that's also Van Vliet. I think he's more of a number 3 guy. And we outlined that in the preview, is that they're just a team full of number 2, number 3 guys. The problem is that's their starting lineup, and their depth. Their bench just isn't that great. It's not as deep as it used to be. They've lost, as you mentioned, Ibaka, Gasol, which you made a really good point about it. I think I brushed it off a little bit in our
You
preview
did.
episode. But yeah, that's a really big loss. I didn't give it its due credit in our preview episode. So they need a little more from OG Anunoby. He was a guy that people were like, he could be a dark horse, most improved guy. He hasn't shown it so far this season. So a lot of concerns there. A lot of concerns. The good thing if you're the Toronto Raptors is you're in the Eastern Conference. So even though, as I said, they're the 4th worst team in the NBA right now, they're still only a game and a half out of the play-in tournament, and they're only I think 3.5 games out of 6th place. And currently, the 7th and 8th seeds are held by the Cavs and the Hornets. So there is a huge likelihood those teams maybe drop off a little bit and the Raptors could easily sneak in there. It is worth noting, though, that some of the teams that are also in competition for that play-in tournament, at least at the moment, are the Miami Heat, who we thought were going to be a better team, as well as the Atlanta Hawks, who were also projected to be right there, but we thought they were going to be a little bit better. So there is still some hope. It's not a lost season yet for the Raptors. However, I will say Masai Ujiri, he's the GM there. We saw with the DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard trade a few summers ago. He's not afraid to make a bold move here, and I think unless the Raptors really turn it around and it seems like, hey, we might give the Nets or the Bucks a run for their money, which I don't see happening. Maybe it's time to get Kyle Lowry out of town. I mean, he is probably the best Raptor of all time. At least when you look at longevity, look at stats. He's at the championship, obviously. You could obviously argue guys like Kawhi Leonard, Vince Carter, DeMar DeRozan even were better than him, but Lowry, he is Toronto basketball. He is the Raptors. And I could see I could see a world where he gets traded here because the GM, the front office, Masai Ujiri there, it's just like, hey, let's retool here. They got some, like we said, they got some young pieces. They got Van Vliet, they got Siakam, they got OG, they got Boucher. Maybe they trade Lowry, get off his contract a little bit, and maybe they're able to bring a guy in free agency. As I said already, Oladipo, I don't really think Oladipo's that guy, but he wants to go to Miami anyway. So I don't think it's a huge free agent corpse this year. However, they could give them the flexibility to improve their team here very, very soon. So that's at least what I think. And they could also really tank and if they get rid of Lowry and they could get a really high draft pick here in the upcoming draft. I'm hoping that doesn't happen because, as I said to start this whole point, I am a Pistons fan, so I really hope the Pistons get the first overall pick because I think we are hands down the worst team in the NBA. But anything else you wanted to add? I know this was your first point as well.
No, I mean, I think we both touch up on it nicely. So I guess I can jump into my second point, and then I'll let you go after that with yours. But so here's my second topic that I'm going to bring up. I thought maybe you were going to go in this direction at first when you brought up the Pistons and Jeremy Grant, but I just want to talk about some of the players that have been, I would say, right in the running for that most improved player. First, obviously, Jeremy Grant. I mean, personally, I think it's a little bit of a case of somebody has to score the basketball. Why he's averaging 25 a game right now. Yeah, obviously he's very much improved. I'm not denying that at all. I didn't think he's going to be this good when we signed him personally for $20 million. I thought maybe it was a little bit of an overpay, but clearly he's obviously more than a role player. He's a guy that has a lot of scoring potential, but I really do think I mean, Blake Griffin's struggling. A lot of other guys, no one really can score. Derrick Rose been in and out of the lineup. They really just don't have a lot of reliable options. He's been that guy for them. And I mean, you can't fault him for that at all. He's playing extremely well right now. I don't think it's sustainable for him to average 25 a game, but I think 20 a game, absolutely. And it'll put him right in the running for most improved player and definitely a good for their future, at least a guy they can kind of build around. He seems like a good signing so far. For me, the main guy I want to talk about the most is Christian Wood. And this is the guy that we let go.
Yeah.
Signed to the Rockets for a more affordable deal than Jeremy Grant. I think he's playing out of his mind personally. I think, it's been a chaotic start for this team, the Houston Rockets, with James Harden, all the James Harden news. But this dude's averaging 20 and 10 right now, and he's been pretty efficient from the floor too, shooting over 55% from the floor as well. Not as good from three as he was last year, but he'll pick it up, I'm sure. He's a good enough shooter to shoot over 30% from three. But really, I love Christian Wood, man. I mean, I'm so sad we let him go. It's one of my, honestly, I know he was only here for a short amount of time, but he really embodied the Piston, the Detroit Pistons culture, a guy that was constantly just counted out. I mean, this dude was cut from a Chinese basketball team without even playing a single minute for them. I was looking up a little bit of research beforehand, just kind of looking at some of his backstory. It's a guy that's been counted out multiple times in his career. He's been on practice squads, G League teams, been a total bench warmer in plenty of NBA rosters. So last year, he finally was able to step up a little bit before the Andre Drummond trade. But once Andre Drummond got traded, it was clear that this guy is a legitimate starting center in this league. He's not the greatest defensively, but the fact that he's averaging over 20 a game with James Harden, who's averaging 20 a game, and John Wall, now without James Harden, you even saw it their first game back. I mean, I think he had
27-15, I think. 27-15, yeah.
Yeah, he had a monster game and then multiple blocks as well, which is something you're going to need him to do as a rim protector. So, I mean, I really like Christian Wood. I personally think he deserves most improved player, but, that remains to be seen. I'll let you kind of discuss after I get into these next two guys I want to bring up as well. Chris Boucher, which we already talked about, getting him. He's been a stud, obviously. They need to get him in the starting lineup, though. Then I think he has a very good shot. I already think he has a good chance of winning most improved player, but definitely ups his chances. Similarly to Christian Wood, a guy that was kind of a bench warmer for at least his first couple seasons, but has really taken a bigger role because he's needed to and been awesome in it. And then the last guy, this is more of a guy that went from star to superstar, and I think you're seeing it before your eyes. There's an argument he's their best player now. It's Jaylen Brown. He's been an absolute stud. Even last night, they crushed the Magic. I watched a lot of that game. He looked awesome in that game. He's been a great passer this year, really improved as a player overall. I still think Tatum is their best player. There's some disagreement with, a few friends and stuff, but I mean, Jaylen Brown, he's warranted it. He's a great player. This guy's an absolute stud. He's just only getting better. But, anybody you want to talk in particular on this list, but those are my four names for kind of the front runners for most improved player.
No, I mean, you mentioned Wood and Grant was your first two guys, and the other guy I was going to say was Jaylen Brown, and then you mentioned him at the end too. So, no, I mean, I 100% agree with everything that you said. I mean, I don't love because I think Keldon Johnson too on the Spurs. He's been very improved. Even Shake Milton too on the Sixers has been very improved. I think he could garner some votes here very soon. Because it's going to be hard to see there because I know the Sixers are down a lot of people, so it'll be interesting to see if Milton can continue to play really well. shooting the ball and everything, even as more of their guys come back. But he's been really impressive as well. But I think he is more a little bit lower on the tier. I think the four main guys that you mentioned are the four top guys. I mean, Chris Boucher, we saw Siakam win the Most Improved award just a couple seasons ago. In a very similar way, he was a bench guy. He was an energy guy off the bench. Now I think he's still coming off the bench, but hopefully he's probably going to find his way in the starting lineup here very soon. Hopefully for their sake, and we might even see those points and rebounds go up even more. Christian Wood, he was, as you said, cut from a bunch of different teams, found his place in the Pistons. Don't know why we decided to give the money we could have gave him to a guy like Mason Plumlee and also a guy like Jeremy Grant, who, as you said, he has been really good, but it is a case of the Zach LaVine itis, or the Buddy Hield itis, where someone's got to score the basketball. So I guess it's going to be you. And so it's great. He looks really good, and I think he's proved himself in a way that he could be a solid number 2, number 3 option instead of just a number 5 or number 6 option like he was in Denver. So for the Pistons' sake, maybe, I mean, he's still really young. I think he's only 26 years old. I thought he was a lot older than he really is. So that he could potentially be part of the next great Pistons team, or the Pistons could potentially move him to a contender. And he could be a very solid number 2, number 3 guy. And then also Jaylen Brown too, as you said, went from star to superstar. He's improved every single year of his career to this point. Last year was his first time averaging 20 points. This year he's averaging almost 26 points a game. He's added about 6 rebounds, which is pretty on par for what he did last year. Assists have gone up. You mentioned it there. He's still a great defender. Nice steals. Gives you a little bit of blocks, not a lot though. And I know you said you didn't want to call me out, and you said some of the friends that said maybe Jaylen Brown's better than Jason Tatum. I think this year, if you're just looking at this year, of course, it's a very small sample size so far. I think Jaylen Brown has played better than Jason Tatum. Yeah, Tatum has been a little bit more clutch. He's hit a few daggers in the final seconds, but at the same time, I do really think that Brown overall has been a better player. And I think he could be I think he's a superstar now, and I think he could be a really solid choice for Most Improved. At the moment, if I had to bet, I would say it's Christian Wood's award to lose. But I think any of those 4 guys that you mentioned, and I'd even give some love to Shake Milton, like I said, would be a really good option there for the Most Improved Player award. But it's great to see a lot of new guys get some Most Improved love for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with that. Shake Milton, another guy that's interesting as well. But I'll let you get into your next point if you would like to.
Yeah, so this is the one I kind of teased it at the beginning with the Indiana Pacers. So they haven't played yet with Caris LeVert, so I think that'll give them a little extra oomph, if you will. But currently, they are the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference, but they're at 8-4, and they're only a half a game back of the first overall seed, so it's very tight there in the Eastern Conference for those top 4 teams. They have the second best point differential in the Eastern Conference, only behind the Bucks. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. They've won 2 in a row, and they're just a really good team, adding another really good player. I know Oladipo looked pretty good there. So to start the season, he was averaging 20 points a game, and had some nice rebounds, assists. Wasn't great defensively, as we had become accustomed to seeing him before the injury, but still had almost 2 steals a game. So he was a good player, but I think he didn't want to be there. And I think getting a guy like LeVert, despite the injury concerns, but Oladipo also had injury concerns, I think that'll really push them into the next level, because I haven't even mentioned them yet. But Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, I think they're 2. I know they're not doing the All-Star game this year because of COVID, but I believe they are going to announce the All-Star teams. I'm pretty sure. I think Sabonis and Brogdon. I don't know the last time the Pacers had 2 All-Stars. It had to be during the Paul George, Roy Hibbert years, I'm pretty sure. And I think Sabonis and Brogdon, I think they're both going to be all-stars. Both of them are averaging over 22 points a game. Sabonis has 22 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, that's awesome for a big man. And then Brogdon's got almost 23 points a game, almost 8 assists a game, almost 5 rebounds a game. Almost 2 steals a game. I mean, he's been a really good player. I mean, and if you're the Bucks, I know they got Drew Holiday now, but you just got to be like, man, we let this guy go and we didn't want to pay him. I mean, he's really shown here. This was a guy I thought at best was a 6th man when Indiana got him, and he's really proved that he is at least one of the top players in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, it's a weaker conference, but he is still a really, really good player. And they got Sabonis. Miles Turner has played really well defensively as well, averaging 4.2 blocks a game, which is pretty insane. And then they have a solid bench too. They got Justin Holiday, they got Doug McDermott, they got TJ McCollum, they got the other Holiday brother and Aaron Holiday. And this they're doing this all also without one of their top scorers from last year and TJ Warren too. So I know he's still hurt. I don't know much longer he's going to be hurt for. I think it was a semi-serious injury. But if they get him back and they also add LeVert, I think this could be a very scary team because the East, I know the Nets and the Bucks are probably the two best teams. But we saw last year the Heat. Of course, it was the bubble. Hopefully, by when the playoffs start in June and July, things are at least a little bit more normal. The NBA, I believe, is talking about potentially fans will show up to the arenas by then, depending on how the vaccine and everything goes. But I think Indiana, we could see them go on a Miami-like run last year. I think this is definitely the most exciting Indiana team we've seen in several years. And I really like watching them. They're a lot of fun to watch. They play hard defense. They obviously have really good offensive players. And I think this is a team that could make some serious noise. And it's a team that I think we both said this team is so boring. They're going to make the playoffs, but nobody's going to care in our preview episodes. And I found myself watching a lot of Pacers games so far this year because they got some good players and they're a really entertaining team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers clearly exceeding both of our expectations for what we thought they could do this year. But I really think Brogdon and Sabonis are basically just linked together for me as like almost one player because they're both improving about the same rate every year. You know, both of them kind of came out, I would say kind of broke out onto the scene last year into their roles. But Sabonis, you know, has taken a massive step forward this year, both in his playmaking and scoring ability. You know, he's starting to stretch the floor a little bit more, which I like to see. He's not the greatest shooter, but at least he can at least make defenses think about it. And then Brogdon, clearly, I mean, this dude is he's an efficient scorer. He takes good shots. He's always under control. And some people, I think this is the guy that just no one ever talks about at the point guard position. I think there's a lot of players in that, you know, in his tier that he's better than and that people wouldn't even think about it. Like Jamal Murray or whatever. I don't think it's even close between them. I think Brogdon's a lot better than Jamal Murray. And
wow, that's a hot take.
Yeah, it might be, but Brogdon, I think he's just an incredible player person. And Murray, it doesn't help that Murray's gotten off to a slow start this year. That may be a little bit recency bias there as well. But I really think Brogdon is an excellent scorer defensively, maybe one of if not the best defensive point guard in the league as well too. I mean, you watch the Pacers against the Blazers the other day. I mean, I love the Blazers, but they got absolutely dismantled in that game. It was just a one-sided affair the entire game. I mean, Miles Turner is an absolute force in the low block, both on offense and defensively. Just changes so many shots. Even I know he has 4.2 blocks. It feels like a lot more than that because he's changing shots all the time. And I mean, you even look at guys like Sabonis and Brogdon clearly have just taken both the next step for this team to make a run potentially I think they're a dark horse NBA Finals contender now. This is kind of where I thought the Raptors were. I think they're what we thought that Toronto was going to be this season. Personally, I think this is a team that maybe like isn't the favorite, but after that, it's a team that are not going to be an easy out. I think basically any series that they lose in is going to go to 6-7 games, and it's going to be like the other team to be questioning if they can even like win the series. You know, I think they're going to make it tough on anyone. I know Oladipo, LeVert, that changed. The thing that's concerning about that, I guess, is Oladipo's really good perimeter defense. LeVert not quite as good, but I think the rest of their team, both the Holiday brothers, Brogdon, Sabonis, Turner, they definitely make up for it on the defensive side. And LeVert's not a scrub defensively. He's, I'd say, an average defender, but I think where he gives them a boost as a secondary playmaker. I know they have Sabonis, they have Brogdon. Brogdon can play a lot more off ball now, which he's a great shooter. I think that's a good idea for them to give it to the LeVert. He's an awesome playmaker, can score a lot too. A guy that can create a shot, I'd say, a little bit better than Oladipo as well. Defense, like I said, a little bit of a concern, but I think besides that, I think it's mostly an upgrade. And like you said, they're getting production from these secondary pieces like Doug McDermott, who's, I mean, I thought this dude was retired, to be honest. I don't remember the last time talking about Doug McDermott. This dude's splashing this year. TJ McConnell playing well. The Holiday brothers chipping in as well, both offensively and defensively. I mean, it's just a good, fun basketball team to watch, and they finally have some star power too. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do in the playoffs. But if you have anything to add to that, go ahead.
I was just gonna. It's funny that you said they're like the Raptors because that's a great point. And actually, they have Nate Bjorkgren. He's their first year coach. He was assistant last year in Toronto under Nick Nurse. And obviously, I mean, we saw it's not going to be a direct comparison. We saw Nick Nurse, what he did in his first year as head coach of the Raptors, right? They won the championship. So I don't know. I'm not ready to just declare the Pacers as champions, especially now that the Nets have James Harden as well. But I think this is a team. I mean, I could realistically see them beating the Bucks in a series. I think the Nets are the only team that I'm a little worried about. But like they're not going to play defense, and the net. And I know this isn't an NFL podcast, obviously, but this is very similar to what we were talking about with the Rams and the Packers. Or the Rams have really good defense, the Packers have good offense. So it'll be similar to that, I guess, in a playoff series between the Nets and the Pacers. But last thing too, I think Brogdon and Sabonis, they could also be most improved candidates, to go back to your previous point as well. They could be they kind of broke out last year, as you said. I think Sabonis was an all-star, Brogdon was almost an all-star, so maybe they won't get some votes because of that. But you can make a very serious case that they could be in that most improved player conversation as well. But definitely watch a lot more Pacers basketball than I thought, and that's why I wanted to bring them up as my second point. But let's get into your final point here.
Yeah, and my final point is this one's a little bit another award centric, I would say, but it's not the MVP because I don't really want to talk about that yet. I think that's going to be interesting to talk about, towards the All-Star break. It's too early to tell. There's so many candidates. I want to talk about the Rookie of the Year medal, and it's between two guys, and it's really, you can bring up another guy if you'd like, but there really isn't a third for me. It's between Tyrese Halliburton, who, if you didn't know, plays for the Kings, was, I would say, arguably the biggest steal of the entire draft, and one of the only players that's made a significant impact in this draft so far. I mean, Halliburton for the Kings, he's been incredible off the bench for them, playing almost starter minutes, and I expected this. I think Halliburton is. I wanted the Pistons to draft him personally. A guy that I really like. He's got an odd jump shot, that's for sure. Watching him shoot the ball, but it goes in often, and he's obviously a very gifted scorer, but I think the area that he's really provided, he doesn't have as good of numbers as the other guy that I'm going to bring up, and I'm sure you also know who it's going to be. But he's averaging 12 a game, 5 assists, couple rebounds, a steal. But he's also been just so impactful on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, if you watch any Kings basketball, he's definitely the best defensive player, no doubt about it. He's been shooting lights out. He takes really good shots. I mean, he's shooting 52% from the floor and from three right now. That's absolutely incredible, especially for a rookie. He just seems like he's just gifted beyond his years, if that makes sense. Like a guy that his maturity is just above the rest for a rookie. Just seems like a guy. He's not a rookie. It really is what it comes down to. He's a guy that's taking good shots. He's making really smart plays. Doesn't turn the ball over very much. He's a good defender. He seems like a really good teammate as well. Just a guy that I really like to watch, and has been one of my favorite players in general, not to watch, not just rookies. Just I've really enjoyed watching him play. It's him and De'Aaron Fox have been why I've tuned into some Kings games recently, despite them being awful. They're not very good, and they're fun, but they're not good. So, but Halliburton, I think he deserves Rookie of the Year. But the other guy I'll bring up has some better numbers. It's LaMelo Ball. I mean, he's been awesome too. I mean, he's been incredible, averaging 12 a game, six assists, 6 rebounds. Almost 2 steals a game. He's also a good defender. I think he's played good defense. But some of those numbers may be a little inflated if you see the rebounds or whatever. But he's also playing a similar role to Halliburton, where he's getting a lot of minutes. He's producing well with them, but probably should be in the starting lineup. I think we'll see him eventually take over Devontae Graham, who just is throwing up absolute bricks right now. He's shooting 30% from the floor, under 30% from three. Eventually, they're going to make the switch to where have LaMelo start, and then Devontae Graham can come be efficient off the bench as well, and lead the second unit to absolute failure. But I really like both of these guys. I really like the way they're playing. I think Halliburton has been the best rookie. Maybe he won't win the rookie either, just because Ball's got a little bit better numbers. Not shooting as efficiently, but overall a little bit better numbers. But Halliburton personally is the guy that I really have enjoyed watching the most. Both guys deserving of this, discussion. But if there's anybody else you want to bring up, you can get into these two. Just go ahead now. I'll give you the floor now.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ball's going to win it just because he's got, obviously, I mean, we've been watching highlights of him since I was like a sophomore in high school. So it's been 5 years now, nonstop. And he's, for the most part, obviously the youngest player to ever record a triple double. He's lived up to that hype for the most part. I think I think once he gets in the starting lineup, I think his stats are going to get even better. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't win it just because of all the buzz around him. And it is very similar to the other awards. It is very narrative based. However, I will add that Halliburton, he does a lot of the small things. Good defender, and Ball's not a bad defender either. But I also just love when I'm not sure if you noticed this too, but he's really good at like directing people where to go.
Yeah.
He provides a lot of great leadership, a lot of like the intangibles that you might that won't show up on a box score. And that's I know the Kings aren't a great team at the moment. They're out of the playoff picture. I know they're 5-8 at the moment. So not awful, but not good by any means. Still below average, obviously. But the Kings are a team who lacked a lot of leadership, and that's I don't know, not to go off topic. I'm not sure if you saw the thing where Marvin Bagley's dad said, "Trade me," and then or make sure you trade my son or whatever. And De'Aaron Fox's dad came out and said, "Okay, bye," or please trade him just to get him out of town. So they obviously have some issues there still there in Sacramento, but Halliburton has brought some high level professionalism that that's especially awesome because he's still such a young player. He's still a rookie, so he's definitely number two. I think Ball is going to win it overall. James Wiseman too. I mean, he's still not getting as much playing time or as many touches as you would like because he's on a good team in the Warriors. But he's shown a lot of really good potential, and I think even though he might not win the Rookie of the Year this year, I think it would not surprise me if a few years down the road he is the best player out of this draft class. I mean, I've really liked what I've seen from him, his ability to play solid defense for the most part, but also he can run the floor as a big guy. He can shoot. He can go down low. He can rebound. He can elbow Blake Griffin in the eye when they played the Pistons. He can do a little bit of everything. So his numbers just aren't good enough. He's got almost 11 points. Yeah, 10 and 6 with a block and a half a game. So just not impressive numbers, but if you watch him play, you can really see the flashes and the potential there. And I think he's going to be a really good player. It wouldn't surprise me if he's better than Ball and Halliburton too. And another couple of guys I wanted to mention real quick. Anthony Edwards too. I think he's been pretty disappointing for the most part. A lot of the concerns that were with him have followed him into the NBA. He's actually leading the rookie class in scoring, averaging almost 14 points a game. But that's really it. I mean, he's had a few monster dunks. He's able to score a little bit, but that's really it, honestly. Shooting's not been great. He really hasn't done anything defensively. His big thing I remember coming out of college was his ability to get to the basket, and he really hasn't attacked that much either. So he really just hasn't done that much. He's still obviously a rookie, still very early. I'm not going to say he's a bust yet, going number one overall, but there is some concern there for sure. And then, but yeah, that's really it. I mean, Tyrese Maxey has been really good there for the Sixers. He obviously went off when they lost a bunch of their guys, and he had 39 points. So he's been good. Sadiq Bey has been good for the Pistons. Peyton Pritchard's been solid for the Celtics, but those guys are Denny Avdija has been pretty good for the Wizards as well. But those guys are more. Even Patrick Williams too, but they're not. Their stats aren't great. They could be good players, but they're much more like kind of complementary pieces. And Halliburton and Ball are the two guys that are making the most, the biggest noticeable impact. And I would say Wiseman's right there at number 3 because he's showing his stats still are pretty good in comparison to the other guys, and he's showing a lot of really good flashes. So. If they give him a little more run here, similar to Ball, they give him a little more run here as the season goes on. It wouldn't surprise me if Wiseman makes it a really good late push if his stats really start to improve. But
yeah, I can agree with that for sure. Yeah, definitely some good names to raise as well. Secondary pieces. I do like Wiseman as well. I think he's played good in limited minutes, but we'll have to see if his minutes increase and he can kind of make bigger impact on this team. He's definitely got a very high ceiling for his career, though. I definitely like him a lot more than some of those other candidates in terms of his ceiling in this league. But I'll let you get into your final point, and then we can get out of here.
Yeah, my final point is honestly let's just look at this playoff picture right now because it is pretty insane. And I know it's not like an award race or anything like that, but I was trying to think of the final point, and I think this was pretty good because you look at this playoff picture. So I'll just run through it real quick. So Eastern Conference, not super surprising. You have the Celtics, Bucks, Sixers, Pacers at number 4, little surprising. And then you have the Nets at number 5, who have been kind of disappointing as of late after starting off really hot. We didn't really talk about that too much because they obviously are getting James Harden, but that is definitely something to keep in mind. And then this is when things get really weird. So then you got the Magic at 6, Cavs at 7, Hornets at 8, And then you have the Hawks and Heat. Heat have, I mean, they've lost a lot of guys due to COVID safety protocols, injuries. They're kind of a mess right now, but they're still in the play-in tournament spot there at number 10 in the East. And it wouldn't surprise me if they get a little bit better. And then you have teams like the Knicks who got off to a great start, but now have lost 5 in a row, coming back down to earth. All those Julius Randle MVP talks, and the Knicks are back, baby. It's proved that those aren't true because they're not a great basketball team. And then you got the Bulls too. Levine's going off, but they haven't been great. Raptors, where I talked about them, have been extremely disappointing. The Wizards have been very disappointing, and then the Pistons, who a lot of people expect to be last. But so the East is pretty nuts. Especially there towards the end of it. But then you go into the West, and it's like, what is going on? So you got the Lakers, Clippers 1-2. No surprise there. You get the Jazz at number 3, the quietest 3 seed I think I've ever seen in my life. I've heard nothing about the Jazz. They were almost my final point, but I didn't really have anything to say about them. They're just a solid team. And you got the Suns at 4, who have been really good. Unfortunately, they've had to miss some games because of COVID safety protocols. Hopefully, they're able to get back on the court and keep up their good season. And then you got Portland, Dallas, Golden State, San Antonio, Denver is currently out of the 8s. They're number 9 in the conference right now. They were a top 3 team we had coming into the year. Haven't been super spectacular there. OKC, we thought they were going to be hands down the worst team in the league. They're currently tied. They're in the play-in tournament. They're tied for the 7th seed. What's going on? Yeah, Memphis, who hasn't had any of their top 2 players, also right there. Won 3 in a row right now. You got the Rockets, who are going to be an interesting team now without James Harden. You got the Kings. We already talked about them with Halliburton, Fox. The Pelicans, who seem like they're up by 20 points every game and then somehow blow it and lose the game. And then you got the Timberwolves, too, who aren't a great team, especially without Karl-Anthony Towns. So overall, it's absolutely insane. And my point here was I just wanted to ask you is what team is like your most surprising team, either for a good reason or a bad reason? Like, is the team that you're just like, how is this team this bad, or how is this team this good? I guess that's kind of the question I wanted to pose here as we finish this episode up.
All right, so yeah, I won't bring up the Raptors again because we kind of already touched up on them. I think I'm gonna go the other direction. I want to go with a team that I'm surprised with how well, I wouldn't say how good they are, but them being relevant at all is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if you watched their game last night, it was maybe one of the best games of the entire NBA season. I know probably not the casual fan is going to be watching Oklahoma City and Chicago Bulls at 8:30 on a Friday night. I mean, but yeah, here I was watching the entire game. My biggest takeaway is that, I mean, I think you see a couple other possible candidates for most improved player that don't get enough notoriety. And I honestly didn't even know the Thunder were 6-6 personally. So it's just partly on me too. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing out of his mind right now. Just had his career high in points. Just watching him play. I mean, I know me and Drew, we went to Pistons Thunder last year and we got to see him firsthand, how effortlessly he scores and how it seems like he almost puts no energy out there, but is still awesome at basketball. So, I mean, I think once he continues, I honestly think that's an area he can improve on, is just kind of energy output, while he's on the court. I know it makes it look so easy scoring, but I feel like maybe he can, dial it up a little more defensively. And I think he even has a little bit to some extent. He looks a little more active, looks like the leader, not really under Chris Paul's wing anymore. I really like him as a player. I think he's developing into a star in this league and a guy that I really think has a high ceiling and can take this Thunder team to the next level once they start getting all these draft picks and stuff. I think he's the guy to build around for the future. I really like him a lot. And then the other guy that you could argue is right there in most improved player is Lou Dort. I mean, this dude apparently can score now. I mean, he's shooting over 40% from the floor, but yesterday had a 20-point and just carried them in the third quarter, brought them back in the game. I think 3 or 4 threes in the third quarter, and also a career high 6 steals. And he made Zach LaVine's life. I know he scored a lot of points, but he made his life miserable. I mean, this dude looked absolutely dead in the overtime and the end of the fourth quarter. He was deferring to everybody else. He didn't look like he wanted the ball. Even got injured kind of at the end of the game. Can't really fault him for that. But looked like Dort was, I mean, despite him getting a lot of points, he was working really hard for it. And LaVine was on one last night too. He was on fire, so that doesn't help. But it looked like he was just had no energy left in the end of that game. And they really don't have another guy. So that was kind of the difference there. And SGA was as strong as ever. So I mean, there's definitely different ways to look at it there. But, a team that I just really have found entertaining to watch. I mean, they have a lot of those boring veterans, Al Horford, George Hill. But other than that, I do like some of their younger players. Isaiah Roby has showed some flashes. I'm forgetting one of their other guys' names right now.
Darius
But
Baisley too has been
yeah, Baisley,
been
that was the guy I'm
decent.
thinking of. Also made a very positive impact on this team and a streaky scorer for them as well. A team that I'd like to watch. I don't expect it to continue. I don't expect them to be a playoff team, but they're definitely more fun to watch. A better team than I thought they would be. Kind of similar to last year. I didn't think they were going to be quite as bad last year, and then they were ended up being a solid playoff team this year. I thought they were going to be awful, and they're not so awful. So I guess kind of I would say similar proportionally in terms of what I thought they were in the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
But
I don't.
let you
Yeah,
go
I
on
don't really have much to add there to that. I agree; they've been very surprising, and I guess for the team I wanted to talk about the most, because we already, as you said, we already talked about the Raptors. I already kind of talked about the Heat too when I was breaking everything down. Just because they're 4-6, which isn't great, but they've lost a lot. They haven't had a lot of their guys. They're still right there. They still have a play-in tournament spot at the moment. Wouldn't surprise me if they are able to improve vastly once they get more of their guys back. So I'm not too concerned about them. And I also just wanted to give a shout out to Gordon Hayward too on the Charlotte Hornets. He's been really, really good. I know he's a little bit banged up now, but he's been really good too. He could be. It's hard because when you have those guys who were like good and then they weren't good and now they're good again, to win Most Improved Player. And Hayward wasn't even that bad last year with the Celtics, but he could be another dark horse. Most improved player candidate as well. But for the team that I want to talk about the most, it has to be the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, this is another team very similar to the Pacers, I think, where we were like, oh, who cares about this team? They're boring. Who cares? I found myself watching a lot of Spurs games. They're entertaining to watch. Unfortunately, they choked down the stretch a couple nights ago against the Rockets, which wasn't great. But overall, I mean, they went into LA. They beat both the Clippers and the Lakers in back-to-back games, which is really impressive. They play good defense. Obviously, Popovich we already know he's a great coach. And I mean, DeRozan and Aldridge. I mean, Aldridge was out a little bit with an injury, but he's been playing really well as of late. DeRozan's proven he can still be that star type guy for a team. I know we talked about before the year that they could trade them, and it's really up to what they want to do. I mean, I think both of their value is pretty high right now. There's some teams out there that are probably interested in getting either one of those guys. I did see some buzz. Maybe the Blazers go back after Aldridge because now Nurkic is out.
That's interesting.
So that's an interesting thing that they could do. Because I think Aldridge is getting paid a lot of money, but I think he's only got 1 or 2 years left on the deal. So it's not like an untradeable contract. Aside from the old guys, so the big things from the young guys. I mean, DeJounte Murray's been really good. He's only averaging 15 points a game, but he's got a steal and a half. He's got 7 rebounds, which is pretty nuts for a guard who's, I think he's only like 6'1" or 6'2", so he's a relatively short guy. For him to average 7 rebounds is impressive. He's got that insane wingspan. I mean, if you like watching rebound highlights, I mean, he's just like Odell's everything. It's like his arm's insane. It's awesome to watch, and he's almost got like 5.5 assists too. So he's been good. Keldon Johnson, I gave him a little shout out there in the Most Improved talk. He's been good. Lonnie Walker, Patty Mills, he had like 8 threes a couple nights ago. So he's nuts. Derek White, unfortunately, has been out with an injury, so if they can hopefully maybe get him back at some point, he could be good. And Rudy Gay, too. When he's not putting Anthony Davis in sleeper holds, he's been a pretty solid veteran as well. So this is just, and they're fun to watch. They play hard defense. They're interesting to watch offensively. They've beaten some solid teams, and they're a lot better, too, than I originally thought they were going to be at 6-6, currently at the 8th seed in the Western Conference. So I don't know. They're another interesting team. They could go a couple different directions here. They could add to their team if they think they can make a push, or they can get off of DeRozan and Aldridge, sell high, because both of those guys, I think, would have some solid value in the trade market because they have gotten off to such good starts. But the Spurs, I mean, they're the team that, like I said, very similar to the Pacers. I didn't think they were going to be interesting to watch, but I think they've been very interesting too. And another team, real quick, I just wanted to mention is the Grizzlies. They get off to a great start, obviously, without Ja Morant, Justice Winslow, or Jaren Jackson. But somehow they found a way to win some games here. Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Jonas Valanciunas have all been pretty solid. And I think now Ja Morant is either going to coming back in a game or two. So get him back. The fact that those guys were able to keep the ship afloat for the most part. They're right there in the play-in tournament battle. And this was a team I thought was going to be absolutely done once they lost Ja. They were able to keep the ship afloat, like I said, and I think they could be a playoff team as well. And this is another team that I didn't think would have a shot. So those are the two teams. We were pretty negative with our Raptors talk, so I also wanted to talk about some teams that were more positive surprises, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the Spurs. I'm interested in the Aldridge to potentially Portland news. I
Yeah.
think that would be an interesting trade for both sides. But I think other than that, I think the Spurs can be competitive at least for a play-in spot. I think they're very interesting for me for sure. And Murray, that's the guy I want to highlight. I mean, I know, yeah, like you said, he's not the big time scorer. I wouldn't say anything he does is eye popping, but he's very consistent. He can do everything. It's a guy I really like. I definitely respect a lot of his game. And then the Grizzlies, also, without their two best players, once Jaren Jackson and Ja come back, I expect them to maybe even enter the playoff picture in terms of just being in a top
Yeah.
eight seed. I think they have the capability of doing that. I mean, they're hovering right around it without those two. And I mean, Jaren Jackson, I think the quicker he learns to stay out of foul trouble and stay on the floor, get some more rebounds, he grew even. I don't know if you saw that, but he's actually gotten 2 inches taller since he got
Yeah, I saw
drafted.
that.
He's now a 7-footer. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how him and Jonas Valanciunas, play together. And with Ja Morant as well coming back, I think it's going to be similar or interesting to see how some of these guys that have stepped up in their absence, like how their usage goes. But I think it's a team that definitely is going to be interesting to see. And then they'll make life tough for a Lakers Clippers team. I don't think they have any chance of beating those teams. But if they do end up getting one of those seeds, I think they could at least make it a fun series to watch. I think maybe they steal a game, or just at least make it a competitive sweep or something like that. I think it's a team that definitely there's a lot to like though. A team that I'm excited. I hope we talk about it more when these two guys come back. I think
Yeah.
that'll make things really interesting for sure.
Well, and Ja, I mean, he was in his second year in the league. He was like one of the best point guards. I know it was a very small sample size. I think he only played 3 or 4 games, but he was like
All
really
in.
good. And by all accounts, in the preseason and training camp, they were all like, "This guy's nuts. He's coming in motivated. It looks like he might be like really, really good. About to have a monster year." And unfortunately, he had that awful injury. So, yeah, I mean, he could go on a Damian Lillard like run here, and carry his team to a solid playoff spot and maybe even a series victory. I'm not ready to go that far yet. The West is obviously full of really, really good teams, but I think this is a team, another team that I was a little bit lower on. But the
Mhm.
fact that their complementary pieces were able to play as well, like you said, they have. I think it's going to be really, really beneficial for them once they get their stars back. Because I think Jaren Jackson Jr. I'm not 100% sure when he's coming back, but he did say just yesterday they asked him about when he's coming back, and he said it's not that far. So that hopefully means he's going to be back in a week or two too. Because yeah, I think you're going to be a solid team. The West though, there's just it's nuts. Even the Warriors too. They're a little bit surprising. As bad as their season started, and now they're firmly entrenched right there in the playoff picture. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see both sides. I mean, it's so early. Some of these could be mirages. Some of them could just be slow starts like the Raptors. But it's getting to the point where you got to start talking about these trends. They've played double digit games now. Before maybe when the Knicks were 3-3, that wasn't a big deal. But now, you look at the 12, 13, 14 games even. You have to start projecting things and. It's going to be interesting to see how some of these teams finish down the stretch. But I'm excited to talk about it with you and get into it more as we get closer to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's what 10 less games this year, I
Yep,
think. Yeah, there's only
72
72 instead
games.
of 82,
Yep.
which obviously isn't like a huge difference. But it is important to note that it's not as long, so that smaller sample sizes mean more in the grand scheme of things. But
They sure do.
unless you had anything else that you wanted to add, I think that does it for this episode of the Zone Defense podcast. Again, this was our first edition of the Zone Defense Basketball Hour. It's going to be something that we do on a weekly basis as kind of a complimentary episode as well to our weekly NFL episodes that'll keep going as the playoffs keep going in that league as well. So be sure, if you haven't checked out the NFL episodes or our previous NBA previews, be sure to check those out as well. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and as well as search us on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to hit that like button down below and drop a comment on your thoughts on our topics. Is there any big surprise teams that we didn't talk about? Who are your favorites for most improved player? What are your thoughts on the Harden Irving net situation? We love to read those, and we respond to them as much as we can. So, but thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.